Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, November 18th, 2024. Larry Johnson will be here in just a moment on President Biden's insane decision to allow the Ukrainians to use American weaponry to attack inside Russia. But first, this. We're taught to work hard for 35 to 40 years. Save your money, then live off your savings. Unfortunately, there are too many threats undermining the value of our hard-earned dollars. The Fed's massive money printing machine is shrinking your dollar's value. Just the cost of groceries is absurd. Let me be brutally honest. I think the dollar is on its way to being extinct, not just here, but globally. The BRICS nations, led by Russia and China, threaten to remove the dollar as the world's reserve currency. Central banks have been shifting away from the dollar and into gold. And if we go to central bank digital currency, that will not only destroy the dollar, but we will lose our freedom. We will lose our privacy. They can track anything we do. You need to take care of yourself and your family. So here's what you need to do. Immerse yourself in knowledge and information. The writing is on the wall. Now is the time to consider shifting some of your dollars into gold and silver as your bedrock financial asset. Call my friends at Lear Capital, the leader in precious metals, investing for over 27 years. They helped me diversify into gold and silver. They can help you too. Call Lear today at 800-511-4620. 800-511-4620, or go to LearJudgeNap.com. Larry Johnson, welcome here, my dear friend. Much to talk about. What is your take on this decision of the Biden administration, probably made by his senior people, Tony Blinken and Jake Sullivan, to allow the use of American long-range missiles to attack targets in Russia?
Still not sure if it's true or not. It's been reported. That's exactly what the New York Times said, the Wall Street Journal said. Except over the last 2 weeks, we had them said, "Oh, Trump made a call to Putin." Well, that turned out not to be true. That Musk was meeting with Iranian UN ambassador. Well, apparently that turned out not to be true. At least strongly denied by Iran. So, with the caveat that if this is true, this is madness. It's insanity. What are they trying to do? Well, they're trying to start World War III. Now, so much of the punditry has been talking about, oh, these are long-range missiles. Yeah, okay, they travel 190 miles. So let's go to the border of Ukraine and Russia, Kharkiv. From Kharkiv to Moscow, it's about 450 miles. So the attack of missile could never reach to Moscow, could never reach to St. Petersburg. So it's not really a long-range missile. It is, at best, medium range. But what is taking place, the West is facilitating an attack on Russian territory. Well, we've been doing that now for 33 months, going back to 2020, February 2022. So up to this point, Russia has, let's put it, tolerated our attacks without retaliating. Putin, though, did go the extra length, about 3 months ago to say, hey, if the West starts arming with these basically mid-range missiles, and you start hitting deeper into Russia, but it's still not that deep. But let's say you're hitting beyond just the conflict along the border. They'll view that as a war has started with NATO, with the United States. That's the danger here, and I'm not sure that Biden obviously didn't object to this because he talked about it when he was down in Brazil or Peru. He was in one of those places yesterday. So this is alarming. If this goes forward, and if they do it, Russia is likely to strike back and strike us hard, and we could be in that escalatory escalator going up towards a major war.
Before I play the clip to which you referred from President Putin, which is exactly, his words are exactly as you paraphrased them, Larry. Why do you think the administration is doing this now? Do they want to lay a catastrophe into the lap of Donald Trump? Do they want to postpone the war so that when it collapses, it happens on Trump's watch? Do they want to say they did everything they could to help Zelensky? Do they want to boost Zelensky and what remains of the Ukraine military morale? What is their goal from their side?
Well, I spoke with Alistair Crook earlier today, and he flagged an article to me in the Times of Israel, a former Israeli intelligence chief in the military. And he talked about the fact that in Israel, they had this mindset about Hamas, that Hamas was weak, Hamas could never do this, Hamas would never do such and such. And because they believed that, they were unable to see what was happening and what the likely consequences were. Well, that same mentality applies here to the United States, to Western intelligence analysts, to Western military leaders. They, in their mind, really, truly believe that the Russians are weak, the Russians are hanging on by a thread, that all we got to do is just push a little bit more and Russia's going to collapse, that Russia cannot resist us. And they're not thinking through what are the consequences if that turns out not to be true, that Russia can, in fact, strike back.
Doesn't American intel have a grasp on the nature and extent and power of the Russian military?
No. I genuinely don't believe that. If they did, they'd be knocking down immediately these claims that Russia's striking and suffering catastrophic losses. What they're doing is they're taking information from the Ukrainians, repeating what the Ukrainians are telling them, and they believe it.
So do you think that Biden's team thinks that this latest decision, if it was made and if it's carried out, we'll get through those two ifs for the sake of this Q&A, it will materially weaken Russia or Putin, even though it is obvious to any observer, neutral or not, that Ukraine has lost the war and the Russian military has operated superbly?
Yeah, that's what's so bizarre about this. If you look at the New York Times piece, and I think the Wall Street Journal as well, the Biden administration officials that are, quoted, not by name, but as the source of this report, concede that this is not going to change the course of the war. So it's like, well, what is this? To create a shortage so that they can buy more ATACMS from Lockheed Martin. I think it's Lockheed Martin that makes them. So maybe they're shorting the stock, or they're going out and buying more stock and wanting to lay on a possibility that this can be another spending spree. Because the thing people are not paying attention to is that when those ATACMS are fired, there's not a reservoir of unlimited reservoir of those missiles waiting to be resupplied. In fact, it's reducing the supplies, and the ability of the United States to actually produce them has slipped. So, I mean, this doesn't make sense on any scale, from either a diplomatic scale, a political scale, a military scale, or just from a logistics standpoint of the United States. It's insanity.
So Putin has said, not necessarily with the ATACMS, I don't know which ones he was talking about, so correct me if this doesn't make sense, that much of the American offensive weaponry requires intel from satellites in order to aim them. And that intel is protected by top secret security clearance. Therefore, that information can only be accessed through the use of American human beings.
Yeah.
Strike number one. Strike number two, Joe Biden, or whoever makes these decisions in the administration, has authorized military contractors to have support personnel on the ground in Poland and in Ukraine to maintain this equipment. Strike 3, the Americans who are participating in the movement of ammunition from Poland or Ukraine into Russia are fair game for the Russian military. Agreed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, that's all correct. This is Russia right now is busy cleaning up Kursk, and over 30,000 casualties on the Ukrainian side. So that's an enormous loss of manpower in 2.5 months. So August, September, October. So we're coming up towards the middle of November. So 2.5 months, 30,000 casualties, and that number is growing every day. The Russians have had ample opportunity and justification prior to this to hit targets outside of Ukraine that are in Romania and Poland, but have chosen not to. I think in their mind, they would rather contain this for now. What we're seeing is, as the end approaches for Ukraine, the efforts of the Europeans become more frantic and disjointed. It's really like that scene that, when the Titanic goes down underwater and all the passengers are out in the water, flailing about, trying to climb into a lifeboat or get a hold of something they can float on. That's what Europe is right now. They don't have any good options. They have bet the house, as it were, on securing the resources in Ukraine. They have basically indebted themselves to keep this Ukraine effort going in the hopes that it was going to weaken Russia, so that once a weakened Russia was in place, that again, the West could go in and take Russia's resources. It's oil, it's gas, it's uranium, it's gold, it's nickel, it's aluminum, and the list goes on. That's what this was all about. This was about money. It's not like Vladimir Putin was running around making speeches like Adolf Hitler from years ago, where he's talking about Lebensraum and we're going to move to the West and we're going to conquer these people. No, never. They kept saying, "Hey, can we join NATO?" And we're the ones turning around and tell them to go suck it. And similarly, when he said, "Hey, don't bring Ukraine and Georgia into NATO," and NATO just said, "Screw you, we're going to do it." So all of this, the ultimate objective of this, I firmly believe, is the economic resources that Russia controls and that Ukraine controls. And with Russia now, the parts of the Donbass and Luhansk, with Luhansk and Donetsk under increasing Russian control, those resources that are there, and those are resource-rich areas, they're no longer available to the West. That's what's driving NATO, and in fact, probably driving Biden's administration as well.
Larry, are American troops on the ground
in
Ukraine?
Yes. So, I mean, and they're probably operating under CIA cover at some of the,
if they are there, the Russians know it. The Russians know they're there and know where they are.
They may know where some are. They've heard American voices on some of the radios. They may not exactly have them pinpointed, but the Russians don't go out and announce in advance, "Hey, if you're not Ukrainian, you need to leave the area because we don't want to kill you." No, they're killing them all. There's a Telegram channel called Track a Nazi, and it's got, good Lord, there's been it looks like upward of 50 Colombians killed. What Colombians are doing over there, this goes back to what the Gray Zone reported, and you want to talk to Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate about this. But there was the British basically put in a plan. I think they called it alchemy, and this plan was to part of it was bringing in Western mercenaries to carry out what are essentially terrorist attacks, or to use them as a battering ram against Russia. And that's all falling apart. Everything these people in the intelligence community plan to do is it's collapsing around them right now.
Here's Vladimir Putin. Now, this is 2 months ago, at his rational best, almost anticipating this. Cut number 1, Chris.
It is not about allowing the Ukrainian regime to strike Russia with these weapons or not. It is about making a decision about whether NATO countries are directly involved in the military conflict or not. If the decision is made, it will mean nothing less than the direct participation of NATO countries, the United States, and European countries in the war in Ukraine. This is their direct participation, and this, of course, significantly changes the very essence, the very nature of the conflict. This will mean that NATO countries, the United States, and European countries are fighting Russia. And if this is so, bearing in mind the change in the very essence of this conflict, we will make appropriate decisions based on the threats that will be created for us.
Make appropriate decisions based upon the threats that will be created for us. Alistair Crook and Ray McGovern both believe that the Kremlin anticipated this, expected it to come.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. In fact, you saw it was last week, about a week ago, the United States opened a new military base in Poland. So, you know.
Wait a minute, Larry. We only have 850 military bases around the globe. Now we have one more?
Yeah, one more. They put it's like that old country western song, put another log on the fire. It's insanity. And we're doing it for no other reason than to try to intimidate Russia. And America is obsessed with its seeming mission from God to go out and dictate to other countries what they can and cannot do. And we've seen it, we see it even with the talk about, we need to contain China. Think about this, that we talk about, we want to be able to navigate where we want along the China Sea. We want to be able to send whatever weapons we want into Taiwan, and the Chinese don't have a word to say about it. And yet, if we flipped it, and if the Chinese were talking about containing us and controlling, having freedom of navigation in the Caribbean and supplying Cuba with whatever weapons the Chinese wanted, we would lose our minds.
Right.
And so, we dish it out, but we can't take it. And Russia, we keep painting Russia as this, they want to restore the Soviet Empire. What empire? They stayed at home. They didn't have 700 military bases around the world. That's us. And we need to stop it. But we don't. We continue to spin this nonsense that somehow we're this really exceptional country. We're really special because we're showing the world the way of truth, democracy, and the American way. And in the process of that, we end up killing people right and left around the world.
Do you think that this attitude about American invincibility and always being right will change under
No.
Mike Waltz, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, Mike Huckabee, and the people that'll be advising Trump?
No, the only thing that will change it is a punch in the nose. In some respects, the United States is a lot like Mike Tyson. Going into the ring.
The Mike Tyson that fought 2 nights ago, or the Mike Tyson that fought 30 years ago?
No. The Mike Tyson that fought a few nights ago. Because that's how the United States, we still think that we're the Mike Tyson of 30 years ago, okay? We're lean and buff, and he got beat. Got beat by a younger man that, a lot of people didn't think it could happen. Well, that's going to happen to the United States. The United States keeps underestimating Russia. We keep underestimating Iran. We keep underestimating China. And we keep overestimating our own ability to go out and make things happen and control, because we're, again, this indispensable country. And, people accuse, well, why do you hate America? I don't hate America. I just wish we'd mind our own business.
Oh,
I
so
wish,
nicely put.
yeah,
Larry, old Joe and his colleagues have $7 billion remaining of the 265 billion. The numbers are
yeah.
mind-boggling that Congress authorized. Can even the Pentagon spend $3.5 billion a month in the 2 months remaining of the Biden administration?
That's the one thing they're pretty good at. You know, they've been terrible at winning wars, but man, they are great at spending money on a bunch of worthless crap. So yeah, they absolutely could do it. Pour, get it out the door. The new fiscal year has already started as of October 1st. So this is leftover money, and I'm not sure what the rules governing that are. But yeah, they're going to spend it, and again, to what end? To accomplish what? It's not like it's going to magically produce new soldiers for Ukraine, because Ukraine is out of soldiers. It can't build new factories that are suddenly going to magically produce 155 millimeter shells and brand new tanks and Bradley personnel carriers, etc. All of that takes time. They don't have time. So all they can do is throw money, maybe convince Zelensky to steal an extra, $800 million and run off to the Caribbean with it.
A terrible state of affairs, and it doesn't seem like it's going to get much better. Do you think that Biden wants to just make life miserable for his successor by increasing the violence and conflagration in Ukraine?
I'm not sure that's what's driving it. I think the people around Biden definitely want that to happen. But it is now clear why this whole fabricated story about North Koreans was dreamed up. Again, to provide a justification for doing this, something that could even convince Biden, oh, yes, Mr. President, we got all these North Koreans there fighting. We got to send a message. And again, nobody's thinking this through. If there really are North Koreans there, and we're really equipping Ukrainians to kill North Koreans with American-supplied weapons, that could start a war with North Korea. Okay?
Does the Biden administration, you asked this at Sonar 21 last night, I think, does the Biden administration want to start a war with North Korea?
I don't even think they're thinking through the second or third level. All they're worried about, all they can see is just what's immediately in front of their face. But they're saying, hey, they'll start firing these missiles and it's going to hurt Russia and maybe force the Russians to back down. Maybe they're thinking that simplistically. Tell me
about how the thought processes go. Before this decision was made, whoever made it, Blinken, Sullivan, Biden, blithely going along with it, would Intel have been consulted? Would DOD have been consulted? Would anybody in their right mind in the Defense Department have been in favor of this, since it's their personnel who could be killed and maimed as a result of it?
You're talking about ideally what should happen and then what probably happened.
Correct.
We can tell from the New York Times article that there are at least some officials who were in the decision-making process who said, hey, wait a second. If we do this, we're going to run the risk of crossing Russia's red line, and Russia could retaliate. But their argument didn't win. The other side said basically, nah, Putin's just blowing smoke. He doesn't mean any of that. And so we'll do this and we'll show him. So ideally, the way the decision-making process should take place is, yes, you should have the intelligence, you should have assessments, and you should be thinking 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of, if we do this, what are they likely to do? And if they do that, what's that going to put us in a position of having to do and decide? And because you've got to think dynamically and you think out beyond the next 2 or 3 weeks. They're not doing that. They're not doing that at all. Or those that try to introduce that, hey, let's think down the line of what we're potentially provoking Russia to do in response, was just dismissed and shut down. No, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. And look, I've been involved with some conversations recently with some people with respect to Israel, where you're trying to bring out facts, and you get these hardcore Zionists. They will not hear anything. They know we're right. You're wrong. You don't have anything to say about this. And it's like, okay, you try to warn them. Don't cross the freeway when people are driving at 80 miles an hour and you're trying to see if you can avoid getting hit. Odds are you will get run over. And that's where I think we're headed. We're going to get run over on so many different policy fronts because we think we can dominate Iran. We think we can dominate Russia. We think we can dominate China. And we can't do any of the three.
Larry, thank you very much, my dear friend. Much appreciated, as always. Look forward to seeing you at the end of the week for the roundtable with the youngster McGovern.
I'll be there. Thank you.
Okay. All the best. Have a great week, my friend. Thank you. And coming up later today at 4 o'clock, Scott Ritter. At 7 o'clock, your humble correspondent will be moderating a debate between Daryl Beatty, who's a University of Chicago PhD, and will make an argument that Donald Trump and his likely cabinet know exactly what they are doing for peace. And on the other side, a name, face, and voice with which you are familiar, my dear friend, Max Blumenthal, who will argue more of the same, just different faces. That's at 7 o'clock Eastern tonight. Ritter at 4, Blumenthal versus Beatty with Napolitano moderating at 7. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.